Hi everybody and welcome to the third episode of the Expat Files. My name is Paul, and in the two previous intros I explained the concept of this series as well as why I am making this series, not being an expat myself. So I guess those of you who don't know me yet are now wondering what my connection to the Philippines might be. Well, let's not keep you in suspense any longer. I was married to a Filipina from 2000 until 2014. During my 14-year marriage, I built a house in the Philippines, adapted to the Filipino driving style, made some very good friends that I still communicate with to date, hosted several parties, attended weddings and funerals, savored the local cuisine and enjoyed the Filipino culture. Even after my divorce, I kept being drawn to this beautiful island nation and returned there once in 2017 to be with a very nice lady I had met online. When I realized that it wasn't going to work out, I terminated the relationship, but we remained friends, and if I would ever find myself in the area again, I would certainly want to meet up and bring her some of those Belgian chocolates that she loves so much. With this background, does it surprise you that in spite of the bad experience with my ex-wife, the Philippines and its people have become an integral part of my life? I've had unforgettable experiences there. I've made memories there that time cannot erase. Yes, I have made some unfortunate decisions in the past with regard to relationships and finances, but they have shaped me. If these past 20 years hadn't happened, I would not be the same person that I am now. Nothing in life is all positive or all negative. That's why I have chosen to make this series, drawing on the experience of hundreds of different expats, people who are willing to share both their positive and negative experiences, enabling you to draw your own conclusions and decide for yourselves which path you want to take. Enjoy this episode. I asked the expats for their favorite locations in the Philippines. Since the Philippines consists of 7,641 islands, many of which are uninhabited though, one has ample choice. You will hear different opinions here. Some people are attracted to the big cities such as Manila, Davao or Cebu. Others prefer the tranquility of provincial towns. The best known city in the Philippines is of course its capital, Manila. And here opinions really differ. A couple swears by Makati Central Business District, which is one of the nicer parts of Manila, because they travel a lot, and then Manila is a good fallout base, and everything is close at hand. Someone else goes for Taguig, known for its impressive Venetian Mall, which is also part of Metro Manila, and lives there in a condominium community where he feels safe because it's hard to get through the main gate and even harder to get into one of the communities. CCTV guards, roaming guards, and electric fences guarantee the safety of those who live there. He picked Manila because it is close to the US Veterans Manila Clinic. He prefers the city, but really hates the traffic. Other than that, he just loves Manila. Another attractive district of Taguig is BGC, which is short for Bonifacio Global City. According to another expat, this is a beautiful city, safe for women, and everything you need is nearby. Someone else says he prefers Manila because he loves seeing and mixing with loads of people. But not everybody is so fond of Manila. As a matter of fact, I heard many expats say that they would live anywhere but Manila. Their reasons range from too crowded, very dirty and terrible smell, to crazy traffic. Also in central Luzon, there is Angeles City, situated in the province of Pampanga. You will find a lot of foreigners there, especially Americans, who learned to know the place when they were serving at Clark Air Base. An American who lives there in a gated community says, "It has everything we need to raise a family. Kids can ride their bikes and enjoy fresh air. There's a great international school, as well as other private schools, including 2 quality colleges. Clark Airport is close by, so there's no need to go to Manila if you want to fly. It's only a short drive to beaches in Zambales, Baguio City, or other places in central and northern Luzon. It has a friendly immigration office, and it is close to the major hospitals for TRICARE and veteran treatment. Angeles has numerous malls. You can get everything you want here without having to drive to Manila. People are very nice, and it's easy to drive around without getting hassled like in Metro Manila. I've lived in Quezon City, San Fernando Pampanga, Subic Freeport, Olongapo City, Castillejos Zambales, and San Antonio Zambales. And this is by far the best place I have found to live." Unquote. This is all just great, but let's not forget to mention the unfavorable reputation of Angeles as the Philippines' Valhalla for sex tourism. Wikipedia describes it as follows: "A consequence of the presence of US bases in the country is the prostitution industry in the city. Since the early days of Clark Air Base, Fields Avenue in Balibago district is an area frequently visited by US servicemen and has been known as a center for prostitution and sex tourism." A BBC article characterizes it as the center of the Philippine sex industry and dubbed it Sin City. Elsewhere and in later years, Philippine travel publications have described it as the entertainment capital of Central Luzon, the Filipino Las Vegas, and Entertainment City. The American in the gated community argues that there are seedy places in all cities around the world, but that it is actually much worse in Metro Manila. Another one contradicts him by confirming that Angeles is indeed the sex capital of the Philippines. He states, "You can find everything you said in other cities, but other cities don't have anywhere near the bars for picking up women. Angeles is known worldwide for sex and prostitution, the way Las Vegas is known for gambling. Leaving out the sex aspect is like describing Boracay and not mentioning the white sand beaches, or Bohol and not mentioning the chocolate hills. That is Angeles City's biggest and actually only tourist attraction. I had to step in and put a halt to this conversation because it was getting slightly venomous. I think these opposing views give you enough of an impression of Angeles to decide for yourself if this place is for you or not. Other places in Luzon where people like to live include Antipolo. Someone who lives there says, "My neighborhood is quiet and peaceful. However, I prefer something closer to the beaches and commerce." I also lived in Santiago, Isabela. Great people and out of the way from Manila. After I pay off this house, I will look for a place that better suits my needs. Another expat regularly visits his ex and their daughter, who live in Sariaya in the province of Quezon. Says it's a lovely spot once you get off of the main roads. Another foreigner says he likes cool areas like Baguio and Tagaytay. "I've been to Baguio," he says, "so I know I like the misty environment and the low temperatures there. I only know Tagaytay from what other people have told me, and I might like its proximity to Manila, although temperature-wise it won't be as cool as Baguio." Someone else confirms that Tagaytay is close to Manila in distance, but it can take 2 to 3 hours to get there due to a couple of towns along the way that have narrow bottleneck roads, where travel is counted in yards per minute. He went there a couple of years ago and said it was a big disappointment, as it is over-commercialized, very expensive, and too touristy, even compared to Manila. Pampanga is a province in the central Luzon region on the northern shore of Manila Bay. I had a message from someone who lives there in the municipality of Arayat. It's a low-populated farmers' area that has so far been spared of major catastrophes. It has fresh well water, the Mount Arayat National Park, local natural doctors, and cheaper living. Let's leave Luzon behind us and hear what people have to say about the Visayas. Someone who lives in Talisay City, Cebu, says it is close enough to the malls, hospitals, and other good facilities in the main city center, but far out enough so that they don't have to deal with all headaches of actually living in the city itself. They live up in the hills in a gated community and don't have to worry about flooding, typhoons, and other natural disasters. Crime rate is low, traffic is low, certainly compared to Cebu City, and there's a new bridge under construction which would bring them to Mactan International Airport in about 20 to 30 minutes. Living in Talisay City allows them to rent a decent-sized house to raise their family. The internet is reliable most of the time. Someone else says he prefers Cebu City because Ayala Mall, the terraces, and so many other things to do in the city. Another one prefers to live in the province, but does make a trip to Cebu City once a month for those things that he cannot buy in the province. A disadvantage is that they are far away from good medical facilities. About 3.5 hour drive because of the traffic. He said, "There is a clinic in our town, but when facing any serious medical issues, you should waste no time and head straight for the city hospitals." Well, yes, if you are still alive by the time you get there. That critical voice is me talking, by the way. I would suggest that if you already have medical problems when you move to the Philippines, you make the proximity of a decent hospital a top priority in your choice of places to live. Next comment comes from someone who is currently living in Cebu City because he needs to be in the city for business and his children are going to school there. He says he would prefer to live outside the city if he could, in places like Karkar, Argao, or Dumaguete. Also on Cebu is Moalboal. I hope I pronounced that correctly. And an expat who lives there says that most of the tourists who visit Moalboal are staying in Panagsama, but he found a very peaceful place away from mass tourism at only 20 meters from the ocean. Another island in the eastern Visayas is Bilidan, located at less than 1 kilometer from the island of Leyte. An expat was living there in a small town called Naval, but by the time this episode is posted, he will have moved to Kawayan, which is an even smaller town. He loves the country life and is planning to raise rabbits for their meat and maybe some chickens for their meat and eggs. Here I have the input of someone who lived in different places of the Visayas. He says, "I've lived in downtown Cebu in the Cologne area, which is great for availability of everything and has a down-to-earth expat group. I lived in Barili, Badyan, also on Cebu Island, in the mountains but close to the sea for the best of two worlds. I grew sweet potatoes and had pigs. I loved the stress-free, laid-back local lifestyle. I also spent 7 months in southern Leyte, in a small township right on the water. I had commercial fishing nets and worked hard 7 days a week for little return, but loved it. It was great for my physical health. I loved the small village lifestyle, the beautiful location and the local people. Someone says that so far his favorite place to live is Tagaytay. So that brings us back to Luzon, because it is not super crowded like Manila and doesn't have the brownouts and slow internet he experienced while living in Romblon. But where he would really like to live is Bohol. He says, "I visited a couple of times and Tagbilaran is big enough to have good internet and an airport as well." To which someone else replied that he and his wife have a small house in Yagna, Bohol, and says, "The weather there is perfect. I can walk 5 kilometers to the beach, but it is a little expensive." He has to go to Tagbilaran to buy things, and in Yagna they only accept cash. This would confirm someone else's theory who said that Bohol has everything but is small and is the most expensive island after Boracay. I must say that I have been in Bohol only once and just for 2 days, but I like the island very much and would like to see more of it if fate ever brings me back to the Philippines. Most of my own experiences were in Leyte. My ex-wife is from Ormoc City and we built a house there in Barangay Luna. What I have learned in those past 20 years is that the Visayas are the most typhoon-prone islands of the Philippines. Of course, typhoons happen in places like Manila too. But Leyte had its fair share of catastrophes, with the tropical storm Uring in 1991 causing death and destruction in Ormoc City, and Super Typhoon Haiyan, which killed less people than Uring, but destroyed or damaged 90% of the city's structure. I love the Philippines, but your chances of succumbing in a natural disaster are significantly higher than in the West. It's a risk you have to take into account when moving to the Philippines. Or, as someone else put it, despite the country's natural landscape and friendly people, especially in the province, please don't forget that this country is located in the Ring of Fire, where typhoons, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, and the likes regularly happen. It is therefore of paramount importance to choose your location well. Another island in the Visayas is Negros. Dumaguete, the capital of the province Negros Oriental, is a very popular expat destination. According to one of these expats, Dumaguete has very good access to any neighboring island or islet, and most of the basic necessities are there. Many expats from all over the world live there. Someone else who is very enthusiastic about the place said, "I like anywhere in Dumaguete. We have an airport, immigration, malls, international foods, thermal activity, and everything here is great. North, South, and West Dumaguete are all great locations with access to clubs, bars, and coffee shops. It's a well-sheltered location between sea and mountain range." Another expat confirms that it is not the usual route of the typhoons. Now that's what I call a valid argument. It's not as crowded as Manila or Cebu, and yet not in the middle of nowhere. For him it's either Dumaguete or Iloilo on Panay Island. The Western Visayas offer a beautiful environment, are less prone to natural disasters, and it's not as hot as in Mindanao. Also, it's safer than places like Manila or northern Mindanao. Another one prefers to live outside of Dumaguete. He prefers the comforts of the city, like malls and foreigner-owned restaurants, but doesn't like to live in the city. "I'm in Valencia," he says, "as I prefer the mountains, but Darwin is also close and has beautiful beaches as well. I like living closer to the province for the simple life aspect, and here you have kind of the best of both worlds." Another expat chose for Zamboanguita, in the southern tip of Negros Oriental, at 28 kilometers from Dumaguete. He says it's a good location, just far enough from the city to go shopping there or see a doctor, without being in a total wilderness. He says our location is elevated enough not to expect flooding, nor will we ever have landslides. The eastern side of Negros is protected by the from the east by Cebu and from the west by Mount Talinis, so typhoons are not as severe as in other places. I also chose this place for the climate. I hate the cold. Day and night temperatures only vary around 2 degrees Celsius. Usually it is around 24 to 26 degrees during the rainy season and 28 to 30 degrees during the dry season. That is perfect for my bones. For me, every day is like paradise. Someone opted for Tablas Island because of an eco-friendly island lifestyle, great beaches with numerous expat-owned resorts being developed to include an upscale world-class residential villa resort. There are only 150 people on the entire island, which means few cars, no traffic, no malls, no cinemas. He says it's a place where one can enjoy the serenity and quiet of beachfront living, yet only 50 minutes flight from Manila, 50 minutes by speedboat to Boracay, and 7 hours by to-go to Batangas. It's a great place for island hopping, as Tablas is but one of 7 islands comprising Romblon province. There's a large provincial hospital, 2 private hospitals, and many local clinics. The 3 main island groups in the Philippines are Luzon, Visayas, and Mindanao. After looking at the first 2, let's see what we can learn about the latter. Someone said, I love to live in Carmen, Agusan del Norte, right by the sea. People in Mindanao are so friendly, food is rich and varied, and the climate is just so good. Imagine walking the dog along the beach at 5 a.m. watching the sunrise, and then at 6 p.m. watching the sunset. It's paradise. Sounds great, doesn't it? But isn't Abu Sayyaf very active on Mindanao? Abu Sayyaf is a jihadist, militant and pirate group that follows the Wahhabi doctrine of Sunni Islam. I've been told that Mindanao is kind of dangerous once you leave the capital city of Davao. Nah, he says, Abu Sayyaf is active in places like Zulu and possibly Zamboanga, more on the western parts of Mindanao. Around Agusan del Norte, del Sur, and Surigao del Norte is more NPA territory. NPA, or the New People's Army, is the armed wing of the Communist Party of the Philippines. But if you keep your nose clean, they will not mess with you. It's only if you act like a pompous foreigner that they might give you a visit. Mindanao can be a risky place for foreigners, especially if you don't act with respect and humility. But the risk is mainly in the far west of the island. A Filipina says she lives in Misamis Oriental, close to the beach, with easy access everywhere around Mindanao. She calls it a quiet environment with friendly people and simple living. A fervent golf player moved to Davao after studying most of the golf courses in both the Philippines and Indonesia. He decided on Rancho Verdes Golf and Country Club because of course design, course difficulty, cost, access to the senior tour, and last but not least, safety and security. Davao is safe, he says, with great people. Another expat is also drawn to Davao City. He says it's a metropolis, but still easy to get around, good water, safe, less poverty, and the night market is so good that it often features on the Food Channel. Another one says people in Mindanao are nicer and the girls are more beautiful. Well, let's agree that the latter is in the eyes of the beholder. He says that Mindanao has less white men to compete for girls. Of course, one could wonder why there are less white men. I'm still not entirely convinced of foreigners' safety in many parts of Mindanao due to the presence of groups like Abu Sayyaf and NPA, or another one, MILF, the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. A concern which is confirmed by an expat who states, "My first girlfriend was from Basilan. I wouldn't go there, but lived in Zamboanga City for a while, just after MILF invaded in 2011 or 2012. I will never go there again. The majority of people was great to me, but I felt so restricted in what I could do. The chief of police ended up coming to our house saying that I should leave as my safety was at risk." Another expat told me he was only 50 meters away from the bomb that exploded in Zamboanga in October 2002. I think we have covered a lot of territory today, but still, all I can offer you is an impression of some locations. It is totally impossible to cover everything. I made a selection, and hey guys, if your contribution wasn't mentioned today, don't let that stop you from replying to my future questions. I'm really overwhelmed with replies, and it is absolutely impossible to use every contribution without turning this into a boring 2-hour video. I want to end this video with 2 very opposing views. But before I do, I want to thank every expat who contributed to this topic and every viewer who deemed this video interesting enough to sit it out to the end. You can do me a big favor by giving me a thumbs up, a constructive comment below, and, of course, by subscribing to my channel. One expat said, "Wherever the family is, will be the best place to live." Another one immediately replied, "Wherever the family isn't, will be just fine." Is there a right or wrong in these contradictions? I don't think so. It depends on a lot of things. But guess what? In the next episode, I will try to find out for you if you should or shouldn't live close to the family. And as always, expats will share their thoughts and experiences. I will put the whole thing into a workable format, but you, and only you, decide what's best in your particular situation. See you then.